Well, baby, I'm on it with a bottle of wine and an old dirt road, and you're ready to go if you want love. Baby, I'm on it. Leave your cares behind. I'll take your problems off your mind. You know I'm gone.
Hey, for joining us on Live Music Nation podcast. We are with Mark Bjerke of WeFest in Wisconsin, and it is an honor to have you on today. Mark, tell us a little bit about you and then give us some background on where you've come from.
Well, I'm a native of the area up here in Minnesota, North Dakota, and I started my career in advertising, marketing, working in the publishing business, and then in the late '90s, I started my own publishing company. And one of the things, I was based out of Detroit Lake, so I actually became a sponsor at WeFest. So my first WeFest was 1989, camping out in the open area there with some friends. And then in about 1999, I started as a sponsor, and I was the sponsor for about 10 years. And then I sold that company. And you know, you get to a point in your life where you can do what you want to do, not what you have to do. And I just really enjoyed the event business as part of my publishing company. I did own a trade show, big construction trade show. So I wanted to stay in that business, and I was kind of hooked on WeFest. And so I started volunteering out there, working on some projects for them. And then they hired me part-time, and then I started working in the promotions department, and then they hired me full-time to come on as sponsorships and promotions. And then we had kind of an opening with a change of ownership, so I took over operations. So I was in charge of operations and sponsorships. You wouldn't think they'd go hand in hand, but they did, and they actually work really well together. So,
Did you ever dream that you would be going from corporate America to a general manager of a music festival?
No, you know, like any young kid, I suppose I dreamed of playing in a band, even though I wasn't a very good musician. But you know, no, I didn't. I thought I would be, you know, in a different world completely, with construction and ag was my background. So, and really for me, you know, getting involved with WeFest was less about the music and more about the event for me. You know, I enjoyed the putting on the events. I think the biggest charge I get is that, you know, you have an event and you have a year. If it's a new event, you have a year to plan it or more, hopefully. And if it's an ongoing event, you know, during this year's event, you're already working on next year's event on how to improve it and make it better, and what can we do. And so there's always that strive to be better year after year, and you have time to make those improvements.
Mark, what were some of the challenges that you faced this year? I mean, obviously COVID was a serious challenge for you guys, I'm sure, but what were some other challenges that maybe weren't expected this festival season, and how are you going to evolve with those next year?
Well, you know, we had a lot of changes this year, because not only did we have a change in ownership, we had a change in philosophy and direction too with that. And so, you know, we knew going in that we'd have some challenges, because you have, for lack of a better way to describe it, you have a little old with the new, the old ownership group and the new ownership group still functioning together. And so some of the challenges are just mixing some of those philosophies, you know, trying to stay in your lane without, you know, getting too involved in another area that you're going to make improvements on in the future, but you can't really make those changes right on the fly. You know, so there's just.
Tell us about this year's festival.
Well, when I did my first stint with WeFest, our attendance was in that 45 to 50,000 per day. So we were running 150,000 plus through over a 4 or 5 day show. So, you know, we're used to those kind of numbers, camping about 30,000 people, you know, setting up and tearing down a city of 30,000 people in a week. So, and then with the new owners, there was a decline in some attendance. So this year we were right in that 25,000 range, we figure. You know, you have a lot of you have your paid and you have your comp, so sometimes it's hard to judge exactly how many people are in there. But it was down from a historical, but it was up from the last ownership group. So we're moving in the right direction, that's for sure.
How much, as an event promoter and a GM, do you listen to the fans? How much feedback do you get from your audience? And
I listen actually quite a bit. I learned early in my career to talk to my customers, whether my customers are people buying advertising or reading my magazine or attending my shows. And then I learned well from the owner of WeFest, the first owner of WeFest, because he would do the same thing. He would go out in the crowd and just talk to people. Nobody really knew who he was. And I do the same thing. I go out, I talk to people, I have conversations, not only all during the year at events, but during the show, I talk to people. How's it going? What would you like to see differently? And what are some of the challenges you have? So, interacting with the customers one-on-one is really the best way for me to get a feel for what's going on.
So you do a lot of in-person consultations with your fan base. Do you also pay attention to social media and the comments and interaction there?
We do. We pay attention to that, and we try to stay in tune with that. But like with anything on social media, you have those that are telling the truth and how they really feel, and some of those that are just haters. So you have to kind of take all that with a grain of salt. So we do try to answer everybody that contacts us on social media. We do try to stay engaged with them and either answer their questions or address their issues.
I was really impressed with your interaction with me on social media. In your website, that was how we initially contacted you, and it was very quick, and so that was nice. So looking ahead into 2022, what can people expect from your festival? What are some changes that you're going to make, and what can we look forward to in 2022?
Well, again, this year we were kind of mixing some, the last ownership group with our new ownership group, and the new ownership group here with Matt Methune and our team. We're really focused on taking WeFest back to where it was, a bit back to the roots, so to speak. So people will see a lot of changes. We've got a lot of improvements to the property we're doing. Many major big projects to our stage, to our facility, to the grounds. So they'll see those. Those are the things that are obvious. When you see a new building up or a new stage up. Some of the things that maybe people hopefully will see is that a little more friendly atmosphere. That's one of the things that we were really well known for at WeFest before, was that family, that reunion, that your campground managers, your ushers, the people that are checking in, and then you're camped next to the same people you've been camping next to for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases. And the previous ownership group got away from that, and we've been getting back to that. And there was a noticeable difference this year as we move towards that. And I think that's where you'll really notice a big change next year, is that customer engagement, that friendly atmosphere.
Well, Mark, you've been highly successful as an event promoter, and a general manager. What's advice you would give to someone that wants to get into the event planning or the concert planning, or be a GM like you someday? What's some advice you would give them? How do they get started, and what's the best way to do that?
Well, I think first of all, find an event that you love and then get involved, even if it's volunteering. So many people want to come into something and they want to get paid, a lot of money right away out of the chute. Well, I volunteered at WeFest for a couple of years before I even was offered any kind of, a position with the company. They had a big project on for reducing waste at large events. We had a grant from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I happened to, one of the magazines I was publishing was an environmental magazine on being good to the planet. And so it was a good mix for me to jump into something that I knew about to help with. And most of the great jobs that a person can have, you start out at the bottom, because if you want to learn how to run something, you got to learn how to run it, and you got to start at the bottom. So, especially if you're young and want to get into the industry, find a place and volunteer. Find a place and get a job doing that. Whether it's if you want to work in the stage part of it, find out who's running the stage and say, hey, I want to help out with stage production. I'll put stuff together. I'll move suitcases around. Just get your foot in that door, because that's really the hardest part of these events. Is they really are a close family, and so if you want to get into it, don't be afraid to work for free if that's really your passion.
I think that's great advice, and it works not only for the person who wants to start from scratch and get into it, but also, like in your case, when you started and came from corporate America and completely changed careers to do something that you love. That's awesome.
Like I say, people like to pursue their dreams, but so many people want an easy path, and it's not always an easy path. But it also doesn't have to take forever either. It was only a couple of years before I was offered a paid position, and then a couple more years after that where I was brought on full time. And then once you're in the door, well, then you need to show them what you can do. You can't, nobody's going to hand anything to you in this business. That's for sure.
You mentioned agriculture. I'm assuming you grew up on a farm.
I did. I spent my summers on the farm, so that's when I took over maintenance. As part of it, I was a farm kid, and I can not to brag, but I can operate any piece of equipment you can throw at me. Doesn't matter if it's big, small, or otherwise. I can run it. In fact, one of my passions is.
When I was in college and our economics class, they talked about the importance of the leadership that came out of the agricultural and farm communities. And matter of fact, when you put farm-based job, employment, or agriculture on your resume, it automatically went to the top for a lot of companies. And I found that really, really interesting.
Well, it's one thing about being on a farm or working in that environment is it's a get it done attitude. I mean, if something breaks, you got to fix it now. There's no waiting around. Let's wait till tomorrow. You got to get it done, because you've got all these other factors at play. So that's one thing I think about working on the farm. It's that get it done. We have a job to do today, and we're going to get it done. We're going to work at it till we get it done. So,
Mark, aside from buying a ticket to support the live event venue that fans want to see shows, what's something else that they can do to support your venue and other venues that they see concerts in?
Aside from buying the tickets, it's that, again, the support of the community. What's going on in the community. That most of these events, like We Fest, for instance, is a community event, and we're year round. So one way we like to see our fans support We Fest year round is we have lots of promotional events. We work with radio stations, we work with sporting venues, we work with music venues, and we do promotions where we just let people know We Fest is out there. We'll set up a little booth. We'll give away some tickets, but going to those other events too. It's not just your event that we want people to support. It's all events. Sometimes people are event junkies and they'll go to anything just to be social. But from a venue standpoint, if you like an event like We Fest, we do promotions. People come out just to support us and support that event, and have a good time, listen to some music, and maybe win some prizes too once in a while.
Okay, a little fun now. So, what, in your opinion, and this is subjective, what's the best show that We Fest has had, in your opinion?
We Fest? Well, that's not really fair, because I had a really great experience with Steven Tyler. He cut his country album, and we had him back in 2016, and he was different than he is at his rock concerts. He's fairly closed off at those. You know, if you want to meet and greet, you're paying for it, those kind of things. Well, he was wide open. I mean, he was backstage talking to just people in general. He did a great meet and greet. He put on a great show. You know, it was a little bit of his country stuff, but of course he played some of his Aerosmith things. So, you know, that was certainly a good time. You know, Kid Rock has done really, you don't think he really fits into that We Fest thing, but that We Fest crowd just loves him. But, you know, we had Blake Shelton this year, and I'm a Blake Shelton fan, so that was probably my favorite one this year. Dierks Bentley did a great show. You know, there's so many of them over the years, and as a promoter and as the manager, I don't get to see them all the time. You know, I might be working in another area and I might be able to catch one or two songs, but so for me, it's usually that last one or two artists of the night's usually about the time I finally get to go sit in some seats.
The picture of you and Steven Tyler, it is all over the internet, not just a profile picture on your social media page, but it is everywhere. Blake Shelton, what a great show. And I love what you said. He made the entire festival a room and just made everybody feel welcome. And of course, Blake's super talented and really, really good at that. So that's awesome. Okay, let's talk about bands and artists. What's one key element that you see in the successful realm right now with artists who have had successful careers? What's one key element that they possess?
Well, you know, certainly their music is what makes them successful and gets them radio play. But, you know, what endears them to fans is that communication. You know, Blake Shelton, I'll use him as an example again this year. He's up on stage talking to the fans. He's having a conversation. It's like they're in a room together. And then you have some artists that come out there and they barely move 5-6 feet off of where their mic stand is, and they just sing their song and go to the next one. You know, so I think fans really appreciate that when you feel like they're part of your show or they're engaged with your show. So, you know, certainly young artists starting out, you know, and maybe a lot of young artists start out doing that and then they lose that as they get bigger. But, you know, there's not a lot of bigger fans than Blake Shelton. And boy, he just walked around that stage and talked to people and communicated and interacted. Dierks Bentley brought somebody up from the audience, you know, just, you know, interact with those fans. You know, Keith Urban is notorious for jumping into the audience and playing, you know, running through the audience and playing in the audience. And I think those are the kind of things that the fans really enjoy, is that they feel like they're either part of the show or that artist feels like they're part of, you know, that the fans are part of their show. So,
Mark, I want to thank you for joining us today. Your insight, your expertise is going to help a lot of people, not only from the bands and the artists, but to future event planners and promoters, GMs, you name it, and of course the fans, which it looks like you're really in tune with. So thanks for coming on today, and we'll look forward to seeing you down the road.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Jake.
Baby, I'm on it.